Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com. Draft Mechanic, episode 88.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we start off with a Kickstarter preview of Atlantis Rising. From there out, we're all about events. We talk about the recent plays we had at the Gamers for Cures event, and in our beer segment, we talk about the Burnpile Festival from Betrayal Beer Co. In our final round, we asked our Slack channel if they'd ever participated in a charity gaming marathon. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. Know that all is for the best in the best of our
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is the podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
Perhaps experienced with other niche enthusiasts?
Certainly in this episode we do.
Yeah, it was a really interesting lineup of these two things. We had the Gamers for Cures Marathon, and we also had Betrayal Beer Company's Burnpile Fest, which is one of the big festivals they run a year. So a whole bunch of kind of entire day events for us in this particular period.
That's actually part of why this episode is about a week late, because we got back from Gamers for Cures late morning. We got back from Raleigh last week, and we wanted to include all the Gamers for Cures plays and all of that. But Jake also had to fly out on a work trip at, we had to be at the airport at 3.
Yeah.
So there was not really enough time to record and edit a podcast, and also we'd been up for 36 hours, so I think it probably wouldn't have been great listening.
Yes, and I did have a plan for a special thing that was going to release on Monday, but I got so slammed with work this week that it will just be releasing specially on Thursday. And if you are a longtime Draft Mechanic listener and you keep track of when Time Stories scenarios come out, you probably have a vague idea what that is by the sentences I just said. But
we kind of only do one special thing.
Do the one special thing.
Honestly, you and Aaron could have made another McElroy's rip-off, but that's not what's happening this time.
But hey, if this is your first time listening to Draft Mechanic, thank you so much for joining us. You can hit us up on the internet at Draft Mechanic. DraftMechanic.net is the website. It's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that usual stuff is where we are.
We also have a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. There will be a thread up for this episode, as there is for every episode. So if you have an opinion on what we're talking about, that would be a great place to leave it. Also, if you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, or you're traveling through on this holiday week, we are going to have a board game meetup as we do every month. We have 2 meetups a month. Our next one is going to be on November 20th, which is Tuesday at Salud Cerveceria in the Nova neighborhood. We would love for you to come out, have some great beers, they've got their food on their soft opening now, so
finally.
You'll be able to get some food from there and not have to get it delivered from down the road, which...
I'm very excited for a slice of pizza from their wood-fired pizza kitchen.
Their salads looked really amazing. In the beer segment, we're going to talk about... I was down there earlier this week, and they were doing the soft opening on food, and the food looked really, really, really good.
Awesome. Well, cool. We will see you at Salud. By the way, if you're on Board Game Geek and you want to pick up the Draft Mechanic micro badge, we have a micro badge available. So big thanks to Ryan Malone and James Owen Wilson for picking that up since the last episode. There is a thread on our Board Game Geek Guild where you can go and find the micro badge, and if you need some Geek Gold, we can absolutely help you out. We have a ton of Geek Gold from supporting Board Game Geek, and I would love to see more of the Draft Mechanic micro badge out there in the world. In other Draft Mechanic-ish news, the Game All Night episode that we did with Chris Whitpan is now available on YouTube. You can go check that out. It's the 11/8 episode. It is the one with our names and faces on it, if that is the easiest way to find things, I think.
They may not know what we look like.
Well, okay, it'll be our names, Jake and Danielle Bach of Draft Mechanic. There you go.
It's also the only Game All Night with 2 guests.
Yeah.
So if you see 2 people in the picture, that's what we look like.
That's who we are. Also, if you want to see what I look like, I just confirmed that I'm going to be going to PAX Unplugged this year. I was able to find a way to get a very cheap flight, and also I'm working with Gray Fox Games. I'm going to be at their booth a bit, so I'm going to have a chance to get in there and do those things. So if you're going to PAX Unplugged, I'll be there. I'll be at the Gray Fox Games booth about half the time. And if you're a listener in the Northeast and we've never met up, come by and say hi. I'll be the guy that looks like me. You don't know what I look like
In
yet.
fairness, there's probably going to be a lot of guys who look like you at PAX U.
Fair. But I'll be wearing a Gray Fox Games t-shirt or a Draft Mechanic t-shirt. So if you see the Draft Mechanic t-shirt, you got a 1 in 5 shot that it's me.
Name badges, yo.
Name
You'll
badges.
be okay.
Name badges also exist. Okay, but yeah, I would love to see you and say hi and we can play some games or something like that. Cool. All right, on to the Kickstarters. Danielle, you got the Kickstarter updates from our last episode?
I do.
That's how I'm going to say that word now.
The Spirit Island Jagged Earth Kickstarter funded at $795,104 of its $49,000 goal, so that is well funded. This is from Greater Than Games, if you are unaware of Spirit Island. It had 8,080 backers, and it unlocked a ton of stretch goals.
One thing that I saw, they released some pictures and also kind of like a video of the Broken Token crate and insert. Instead of just doing your typical insert, Broken Token is doing one of their big crates for Spirit Island, and it looked really, really cool. So if you did go in on the all-in on that, I hope you're getting the crate as well, because I love Broken Token stuff, and the crate looked freaking phenomenal.
If you spent money on all the things, spend more money on the other thing.
I guess if you're in the point with Spirit Island that you went all in on this pledge, you probably were already ready for a giant storage crate, because there's a lot of stuff in that game now.
Fair enough, and a lot of people absolutely love that game, so it's the kind of thing that if you're going to be bringing the game out a whole bunch, it's good to have something that stores it well, it makes setup easier, makes sure it's all kept in a way that it is protected and easy to get a game started up. So yeah, that's cool that they have a very neat storage system for that. Moving on, Barrage from Cranio Creations that we talked about funded at $493,254 of its $27,207 goal. They had 4,076 backers, and it earned 21 stretch goals with loads of extra cards and content quality upgrades. This looks like they're going to have a backer kit coming out soon, so if you are still interested in Barrage but you didn't get your pledge in, there will be a way to include a late pledge in this.
Yeah, I am going to be looking at that. I was back and forth on this one a lot and completely forgot to check it in the last minute if I wanted back or not.
Maybe don't fourth.
It looks really cool, and I know that Aaron had a lot of good things to say about this game. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to playing it someday. I love the resource wheel thing that it has. But, yeah, that's Barrage. So in terms of new projects, we've got 3 that we wanted to talk about today.
Oh my.
There was a huge blast of Kickstarters in the last week or so, which is interesting. But you're going to hear from estimated delivery dates. You probably know exactly why, because they're all trying to get these out before Gen Con. So first up, from Capstone Games, I've got Pipeline. It currently has 1,525 backers. It's about 100,000 of its $20,000 goal. This one ends on Monday, December 3rd. It's got exactly 1 pledge level. For $49, you can get the game, hopefully in May of 2019. Now, this is the first original game that Capstone is publishing, not a reprint or something brought in from abroad. And this is also a first-time designer, Ryan Courtney. It's also got art and design by Ian O'Toole, so this game is going to look absolutely freaking gorgeous.
Definitely not a first-time artist.
Yes. This is a game of engine building. It has an interesting action selection mechanic. The action spaces around the board are things like trading markets or equipment upgrades. But it has this opportunity for you to take side actions on those actions by spending a little extra money. And the way that the engine building works is that you are building efficient oil refinery pipelines with the goal of, you guessed it, making a lot of money. And I was really interested in this because this is a game, obviously, about generating a lot of money. Your win condition is money. But so many of the actions that you're taking there and so many of the engine building pieces cost money to activate. Like, there's an opportunity for you to replace the worker action space on your board with a machine that kind of runs automatically, but instead of spending a worker there, you're now spending money to run that machine. And there's a lot of interesting kind of synergy like that. The other thing that I think is really neat about this is it looks like it's got an interesting tile placement mechanic with the way that the pipelines themselves are working. You actually have this giant central board that has a whole bunch of different pipelines and crisscrossing of pipes, stuff like that, and you're also going to be using those tiles to build your own pipelines on your board, from what I can tell. And apparently, they have so many unique pipeline tiles in the bag that even in a big 4-player game, you're going to use about half of the pipeline tiles. So no game you play is going to come out the same. And I really like the fact that they're going above and beyond in terms of the components on that, because any replayability in a heavy game like this is definitely an awesome thing.
I don't know. I feel like in a heavy game, you need less replayability because so much of it is working out the strategy, and a little bit of randomization goes a long way when you're trying to absolutely plan for every possible scenario that can come out and make sure you got yourself covered in something that is so absolutely difficult to figure out. So I don't know how I feel about the idea that you're going to be seeing completely different pipeline tiles. Now, that being said, I don't know how much of the game is influenced by the changes that are in those tiles. If the tiles are like, you turn left instead of right, okay, that's fine. Or if it's like something completely different happens and you're planning for a different type of game, I could see how that would be a little bit frustrating.
No, it is straight up like what you just said. A pipeline tile might be like a rectangle kind of domino shape kind of piece, and it's got maybe yellow pipe coming in from this side and red pipe going across this way and green pipe coming in a different direction. So the replayability is really just looking at this one element that's got a good bit of randomization in it and deciding how you're going to piece together the pieces most efficiently there. But the rest of the game of the worker placement spaces, the upgrades you can get, that kind of stuff is all going to be the same. And you've just got this one extra piece you have to figure out. I don't know. It's a really cool game. Capstone's done some very good stuff in the past. We haven't really had a chance to play any of their heavier stuff, but I hear so many great things about the Ruhr Valley series or their other Hospital Connect is part of that as well. And they've done a really good job with the production and bringing these games over. And I know that this is, from what I hear from people that have played this game, a game that's been through a lot of development and turned out to be a really solid production.
Yeah, I mean, that is very cool. And if you are looking for a heavy game, this may be one you want to check out.
Yeah.
If you're not looking for a heavy game, it sounds like maybe don't check this out.
Yeah, and that $49 price tag is pretty nice for a heavy game. You don't really get heavy games in that $50 range anymore.
Well, speaking of things which are the opposite of that,
Yes.
we have a gateway game coming from Maple Games.
Yes, up next we have Imagineers. This one has 219 backers, and it's just a few bucks over its $10,000 funding goal, so it's just funded and cruising along right now. This one ends on Sunday, December 2nd. You can get it for $30 for the base game or 50-ish bucks for the deluxe. This is an estimated delivery of August 2019, so again, probably they're aiming to get this out for their booth at Gen Con. This is a gateway-level theme park builder with tile placement, resource management, and a Mancala mechanism. You're building a theme park together, and each player is trying to build the best roller coaster in that particular theme park as well. The Deluxe Edition adds support for 5 or 6 players, plus some extra components like a first player lanyard. It's a lanyard. That's their first player marker.
I mean, it's better than a weird little glass bead, I guess.
I guess. But anyway, in the gameplay of Imagineers, basically you are working together on this big central board of the theme park, and you're going to be placing different buildings out onto that board and then moving the workers. You have some control, not the workers, the guests. You have some control over where the guests are going to go in the theme park as they move along the paths and stuff. And your goal is to match up guests with the particular attraction type that they are excited in, because then you get happiness. And happiness is the goal of a theme park, correct?
Happiness and selling $5 Coca-Colas.
$10 cotton candy. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I like the theme park theme. We've seen this before with Steam Park and Unfair. It's a good theme, and I feel like it's a space that doesn't get tapped as much as you would expect it to.
I mean, there was also, Coaster Park or whatever that just came out that didn't work?
Coaster Park did exist. Yeah.
This feels a lot lighter than something like Unfair. Unfair with 5 players can be a 3-hour game.
It's so mean.
And it is very mean. It feels more like the weight of Steam Park, but it is much... it's not as much of a spatial game as Theme Park looks like it is.
Yeah.
So this is definitely on the lighter end of things. I do kind of want to say that in addition to the pledge levels that we talked about earlier, $30 for the base game, $51 for the deluxe game. Mm-hmm. Before you back this, you might want to check out the shipping to where you are, especially if you're not in North America, because some of these shipping rates are actually very, very high. It costs $60 to send your $30 game to Brazil.
Yes.
So I do want to point people towards that shipping chart before they back it, because for the weight of game this is, you might want to evaluate whether you want to pay the game cost again in shipping.
True. Your basic North America and stuff like that was $10 shipping, which is still, it's a third of the game price if you're getting that base level game. The deluxe one, they do say that one, the deluxe version, is never going to go to retail. So if you want to have 5 and 6 players in this, you definitely are going to want to go for that deluxe edition.
I mean, that doesn't mean they're not going to release an expansion that has 5 and 6 players later, though. It's just that the deluxe copy is never going to go to retail.
Very possible. But that is Imagineers. It is live, and you've got about 2 weeks to go on that one.
Our final Kickstarter that we're going to be talking about, Jake actually got a chance to play when he was up in Illinois last week. Mm-hmm. So this is Atlantis Rising from Elf Creek Games. It is currently at 1,231 backers at $81,000 of its $20,000 goal. The Kickstarter is ending on December 1st, and you can pledge at one of 2 levels. The standard pledge is $59, and the deluxe pledge, which includes a component upgrade, is $69. The estimated delivery is August of 2019.
Yeah, so this is a reprint and an upgrading of a classic cooperative game. This came out a few years ago and kind of just immediately was never printed again. And it was kind of a bummer to a lot of people because people really enjoyed this. And the team over at Elf Creek Games was able to get their hands on the license, and they worked worked with the original designer to kind of bring it a few years forward, kind of change a little bit of the mechanics and get new art and new design and everything. Art, by the way, is Vincent Dutrait, and it's freaking gorgeous. I can just say that right off the bat. But this is now getting put out by Elf Creek Games, and they have it up on Kickstarter now. I was like really excited in a way that I was able to get a play of this game in. Elf Creek Games is based in Champaign, which is where my company headquarters is, and I was up there, so I shot a message to Mike over at Elf Creek Games. I'm like, hey, by the way, can I play your game? He's like, yeah, let's do this. So we did. We played a 4-player game of this, and it is a cooperative game where you are Atlantean counselors working to save the people of Atlantis from being flooded by the ancient gods.
With buckets?
No, the buckets aren't going to be any help.
I also want to ask, did you have 2 other people that played with you, or did you and Mike play a 4-player game?
No, yeah, we had two of Mike's game group and other Champaign area peoples were playing as well. It was a lot of fun. But let me talk about Atlantis Rising, because I can actually do this as a Kickstarter preview. It's a game we've played, or a game I have played.
Cool, do it.
So you have this board in the center that is kind of a 6-sided island. It's kind of like a 6-pointed star in a way like that. You have a central hub, which is the center area, and then you have 6 spokes coming out of that. So it's an island with 6 peninsulas. How about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And then each of the peninsulas is made up of a series of tiles from the furthest out to the furthest in, that as the island floods, you're going to be flipping over from the outside in, showing that these spaces are no longer available.
Kind of like Survive?
Yeah, okay, that's a really good, a good comp like that. You're going to be flipping over stuff, and it's going to be flooding from the outside in. But each of these spaces on each of the spokes of the island are action spaces that you're going to be sending your workers to. Now, there's 3 that will generate resources. You have like an ore and a silver and a gold. There's one that converts ore into Atlantium, which is the fancy element that we have there. And then the other ones allow you to get some action cards. And also there's a space where you're able to get more workers on this particular city's leg of the island.
Should be converting that ore into buckets.
It would be good if you had some buckets. I think they're going to need some really big buckets. This is a very catastrophic flood.
Oh, okay.
But as the game progresses, between you're going to do like a simultaneous action placement. Everybody starts with 1 main worker and 2 side workers that are kind of like little smaller guys that can take an action. Your main worker has a special unique power that is just specifically something that you have. For example, I had a power that if I placed my my counselor on that space, and that tile flooded, I could pull that worker back and then have that tile not flood. I wouldn't get to take the action, but we wouldn't have the tile flood, which is good, because once everything floods, you have lost the game. It is very bad. Other powers were something like somebody could use some of the machinery that we're trying to build, that we're using the resources to build, that hadn't been built yet because they're an artificer and they're good at artifacts. Another person could take the action even if the tile flooded, that kind of stuff. And why this is important is because each of those tines of the island, the worker placement spaces furthest out have the easiest condition for you to get something. So for example, on the resource generation spaces, the furthest one out, you're going to place a worker there and you will roll a die, and if you get a roll over a 3, then you get that resource. Once you get up towards the center of the island, those action spaces might require a 5 or a 6 for you to get that resource. And so you want to be taking those furthest out action spaces, but between the stage where you are placing your workers, we all simultaneously place our workers where we want them on the island, and when the actions resolve, we will do a kind of a card draw mechanic, kind of like a Forbidden Island or a Forbidden Desert or something like that, where you're flipping over the cards and it will tell you which of the tines of the island is going to flood next. And then we have to flip over the outside tile of that. There's also some special cards in there. There's some Calm Seas cards, and nothing bad happens very rarely. But then there's also some like really bad stuff, like flood 2 different things of your choice, or everybody moves 1 step towards the center because they're terrified of the island flooding. Or maybe the central space, everybody has a lack of faith and they're unable to receive their mystic energy. Like some really just like devastatingly bad options.
Hold up, mystic energy?
This is Atlantis. There's some mystic energy involved. If you go on the center space, you generate this mystic energy, which is used for increasing die rolls and putting up barriers and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in addition to all of the resource management and stuff that you're doing on that main board, there's a side area over here that is the different equipment that you have to build in order to get off the island. And each of those pieces of equipment do something really cool once you build them. Maybe they allow you to unflood a tile, but you have to sacrifice a generic worker or something like that. Or maybe this one gets you 4 extra, unassigned workers that anybody you can split up around with everybody, or this one allows you to draw some extra library cards, which are those action cards. Once you've built all of those, you can build the portal, the energy core in the middle, which is the portal that will get everybody off of Atlantis, because you're trying to save the society of Atlantis while the gods are flooding your island.
I feel like an airplane would work.
They didn't have that technology yet. This is Atlantis.
Oh, but they had mystic energy?
Yes.
Just get like an Airbus and get everybody off.
But, okay, so playing this game was exactly what I want out of a cooperative game. Every single turn of the game, we were talking about our options, we're looking at the workers and the powers we have available, we're kind of calculating the odds of whether or not a specific section of the island is going to flood next. And I love the fact that we were able to just have these discussions openly, and it didn't really feel like it was super alpha gamerable, because you also have those die rolls in there. And that's a thing that you've really got to be aware of, is that after everybody's placed their actions, you might even not get that action because of the card flips and the die roll. So you can all decide, like maybe this is the best place for us to go, or, hey, if you want to put some workers here. But in the end, you're going to have that little bit of randomness in there that kind of makes it alpha player proofable a little bit. You know what I mean?
I mean, I guess. I don't necessarily consider a little bit of randomness negating an alpha player thing. Like, somebody can still say, you need to go there, and you need to roll well.
True. Well, maybe we were just really nice.
Yeah,
so
don't be a dick.
But I just really enjoyed it, and this was the kind of game that was so tightly balanced, it literally did come down to the final card flip. And this is something that's so exciting to me in a game like this, because we talk about cooperative games like Ghost Stories came up a lot in conversation, because apparently Ghost Stories is one of the favorite games of this game's designer. And Ghost Stories is the kind of game that we just don't want to play because we've lost on the second turn of the game through no fault of our own. And then there's some cooperative games out there that are just too easy, to be fair. And we played on normal. This came down to the very final card flip. There are more higher difficulty levels for players that get better at it and understand the way that it's going to work out a little bit after you do a few plays. And I love that balance. I love the fact that every decision in the game, we felt like it was meaningful, and it felt like we were doing something that mattered on that particular decision. Nobody placed a worker and said, I guess I'll just go here and get blank, because we needed that resource. We needed that ore. We needed that mystic energy pretty much every time.
Everybody always needs mystic energy and an Airbus. But did you feel manhandled by the randomness at all?
No. That was the interesting thing about it. Like, you have the die rolls there, but you do have enough mitigation to kind of overcome it. Like, you can spend the mystic energy to get a +1. And with the card flips, I never really felt like I was getting roughed around with the card flips, because it's evenly distributed, and you have the one deck of cards there, and there are enough things for you to do. Like, you have an opportunity to put up a mystic barrier that can stop one leg from flooding one space, kind of like a Buddha in Ghost Stories. You just have it pops that barrier, and then it's okay.
A wall of sandbags.
Yeah, you can put down the one bucket and help out a little bit. But there were enough things to mitigate the randomness that I never felt like it was too random to deal with.
Okay.
So what do you think? Does this sound interesting to you?
I mean, I'm a little hesitant because tough co-ops have not really been in my wheelhouse for some reason. Ghost Stories, you mentioned earlier, that we got rid of just because it was frustrating to both of us. And I really wanted to love Spirit Island recently, which is another tough co-op, and it just, like, I sort of bounced off of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little hesitant about this, but you saying that it was really enjoyable makes me want to give it a shot at least. Yeah.
I think that tough but lots of fun is how I would describe Atlantis Rising. It was tough, it was balanced, it was a lot of fun. And I never felt like it was overpowering me. And I never felt like I had too many complex decisions to make on my side that I wasn't able to participate in the group discussion, which are the things we talked about with Spirit Island last time. It's a very complex game, and if you want to really focus on your particular piece of the puzzle in a co-op, it's great. But I feel like Atlantis Rising, my particular piece of the puzzle was not so complex that we couldn't all talk about all of our pieces together and find some really cool synergy in the way our stuff worked.
Maybe that's how we were supposed to be playing Spirit Island.
We'll get back to it someday. I promise, Daniel. We'll play it again, probably.
Okay, but all right. Atlantis Rising.
Atlantis Rising,
interesting.
Yes. It's on Kickstarter now. I backed it while playing the game because I was having so much fun.
That's poor table presence.
I mean, if you're sitting there with the game publisher, I feel like it makes everybody feel a little bit better. Like, yeah, I'm in on this. It's ending on December 1st. You can back the standard for $59, deluxe for $69. And yeah, go check it out. I was super excited about this, and maybe you will be too. Cool?
Cool.
All right, well, that is it for the top section of the show, it's time for us to move on and talk about a whole crap ton of games that we played at Gamers for Cures.
Want to wear your draft mechanic pride to your local brewery, board game meetup, or board game meetup at a brewery? Check out redbubble.com/people/draftmechanic for t-shirts.
So, last weekend we had the opportunity to go up to Cary, North Carolina, hang out at the Gamers Armory, and participate in the Gamers for Cures charity gaming marathon that benefits the Turner Syndrome Society of the Carolinas.
We did do that, yes.
This is put on by our friend Dan Patrice, part of the Geek All-Stars podcast, and what this was a very understandable charity gaming marathon where we played board games from 8 a.m. on Saturday till 8 a.m. on Sunday. Whew. This was the longest marathon gaming session I think that I've participated in. Like, even when we've done Extra Life in the past, I feel like we haven't gone the full 24 hours very frequently because those kind of have a tendency to peter out around 2 or 3 in the morning. But looking back on the BG Stats app afterwards, I definitely got 20 hours of gameplay in 24 hours. And I think that's pretty dang impressive right there.
Yeah, you track the times that we play games, so that is actual physical gameplay.
Yeah, I've gotten into tracking times on gameplay just to kind of see what that kind of stuff looks like. It's interesting.
Nerd.
Look, well, I mean, sidebar on that really quick. I was really surprised how quickly Cryptid played when we talked about that last episode. Most of our games of Cryptid took place in 20 to 30 minutes, but this is not a conversation about Gamers for Cures. That is a conversation about game times. Maybe we'll do that as a discussion topic someday. But yeah, 20 hours of gameplay in 24 hours, and I think what we want to do for this episode is kind of just give a run-through of what we had a chance to play.
Yeah.
You down with that?
Down with it.
So we got there maybe about 20 minutes after, and a lot of people had gotten into games, but you had a hanger in to get Citrus to the table. This is a 2013 release from DLP Games, and it was recently redone by Taste Your Minstrel Games this year. Plays 2 to 5 players in 60-ish minutes, designed by Jeffrey D. Allers, art by Clemens Franz and Scott Hartman. This is a game of tile placement, territory building, and vitamin C. Danielle?
Yeah, we had definitely talked about this game before. What episode
was it? Episode 39, way back there.
Yeah, and I very much like this game, and one of the other people in our game group had been mentioning that she liked it as well, and we should get another game of it. So we had played it at one of our local game nights, and after having that fun experience, I was like, dang, I want to play that again. It's a very good game. So we had brought it with us, and you and I knocked out a quick game of it while we were waiting for people to finish up their stuff. In Citrus, you are essentially buying different groves of fruit. There are 5 different fruit of which you can buy groves. There are limes, lemons, oranges, blood oranges, and grapefruits. Grapefruits being hot pink in this situation.
Grapefruits.
Indeed. And you are going to be purchasing lots of them off this sort of very unique board where you're buying a row of the tiles, but as you buy tiles, it decreases what's available in the other rows. And then you're going to be placing them out onto the board with a couple of different stipulations. They need to be attached to plantations of the same type of fruit, if there are attached to any other tiles, and they're going to be attached to fincas which are placed out on the board in specified locations, which you know from the beginning of the game, and every finca can only have 1 grove of each type of fruit attached to it. So if somebody's already connected lemons to finca J, you can't connect your lemons to finca J. You are also going to be placing workers out onto the groves as you make them so that they can harvest your fruit, I suppose. And when you take them off the board, you not only lose control of that grove because you've removed your worker, but you also gain money and points for the size of the grove. You're also going to get some points for scoring the fincas when they are completely surrounded, so you're going to want to leave the workers on long enough to get those points. It's a really nice balancing act where you don't want to take too many fruits that you're putting out all of your workers and not getting a lot of money back when you recall them to harvest the fruit, but you also want to leave those workers out long enough that you can get the maximum amount of points. It also ends up looking really pretty because you've got all these bright yellow and orange and red and pink tiles and green ones for the limes. I was actually surprised when we played this not at Gamers for Cures, but when we played it at the local event, we played it with a player who was colorblind, and bar for a few circumstances, he was actually able to play the game fine. There are a couple of similarities between the colors. Like I said, you have orange and hot pink and red that can all kind of look the same even if you're not colorblind. But they have done a decent job of taking the iconography of the trees in each grove so you can distinguish them.
I gotta say, I always forget how mean this game gets in a 2-player game. Because, like you said, you want to kind of work that balance between keeping your people workers on the different plantations so that you're able to have control of the fincas, but at the same time, you need workers so you can, A, get money, and B, place more tiles. Because if you're starting a new plantation off of a finca, you have to put a worker there. You have to have somebody that's growing that particular type of fruit And it's the kind of thing that about a third of the way through the game, I look down at my mat and I've got one worker left and I have no money and I have to pull somebody off the board. And I'm looking up back at the main board and I'm controlling the majority on like 3 fincas and I can't pull any of those people off. And I'm just like, oh crap, what do I do now? And I feel like at 2 players, that's really pronounced because I only have to worry about beating you on a particular majority. In a 3 or 4 player game, I feel like I'm less likely to have control of a place because I'm, obviously fighting against multiple players instead of just one. So it's easier to find somebody to pull. But the thing that I really enjoy about this game is that kind of tug of war that you have in a 2-player game. And it was just like really fun and very mean. And I'm glad we played it first because we came in fresh and had a really fresh look at this. And this is definitely something we'll talk about as the day goes on. But oh boy, dude, heavier and or more strategic games get tougher as a 24-hour gaming marathon goes on.
See, I wouldn't really call this game mean. It does definitely have tough decisions, but I don't feel like I'm ever the reason that you have a tough decision. Like,
True.
There is certainly the desire to beat out the other player to the majority on a finca, but it's not like I'm ever like maliciously leaving my worker on because I don't have enough workers to maliciously leave a worker on. If that worker is not going to get me points or not going to do anything good for me, like in a 2-player game, you need to recall them because the amount of workers you have out on the board, as you put more workers out on the board, is going to decrease the income you get when you pull one of them off. Mm-hmm. So you're going to need to do more harvest actions if you've got more people out on the board because you're not getting as much money. When you pull off if you've got one worker on the board, when you pull him off, you'll get $8. If you have all of your workers out on the board, when you pull a worker off, you'll get $2. So you really need to make sure that you're not leaving workers out there that aren't getting you anything. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily mean, but it is definitely tough.
Yeah, I think it's a really tight decision making rather than mean, I guess. Yeah, good point.
And it's good, and if you haven't played it, you should try it.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that we picked this one up early, and it's kind of just worked into that perennial zone for us that this game will come out once or twice a year. I always enjoy it when I play it. Citrus is a really good game.
Mm-hmm.
So next up, we've got CONEX. This is a 2017 release from Haba that plays 2 to 4 players in 15 to 20 minutes. This is designed by Prospero Hall. It is a game of card placement, and really just card placement.
Yep.
Now, this is one of Haba's new kind of small box, non-kids games. They're kind of working their way towards this, available to everybody kind of game. And this is a game simply about putting cards on top of other cards. You start off with a square board that is also kind of the points board. You're racing to the end of this center track. And the way you do this is by placing a card from your hand on top of the board and kind of overlapping one of the corners. Now, your cards are going to have some different corner cutouts on them, not like physically cut out, but if you look at the card, it's all one primary color, and then maybe you'll see like a corner of a red card or a corner of a yellow card off the edge of your card. And what you have to do is you have to overlay your card on top of that central board and then eventually the other cards so that it perfectly overlaps the color that exists on the table already. So for example, if I have that one with the yellow corner, I'll lay the yellow corner so it overlaps exactly on the yellow corner of that central playmat. All of those corners will have a point value on them, and that's how many spaces I will move forward on the time track there. Some of the cards also have special powers. There's one that allows you to roll a die and you get to draw extra cards or get a multiplier or get a token that allows you to zap a card off of the structure you've built here. There's also one that will give you a +2 points if you lay a future card on top of it. You don't get extra points for placing it, but you do get points for placing onto it. Those generally have a really high point corner on them, so you are still getting incentivized to place out this thing that's going to give somebody else more points. So that's nice. And really, you just continue to go around until somebody reaches the end of the point track, and then that person has win. They have done the best connecting.
They have win.
They have win. Congratulations, you have win now.
How do you love this game?
Man, I really like it, and it's not a heavy game, it's not a super complex game, but it's just fun, and I feel like it's so easy to teach. You can just throw this down on the table, and this is our 15-minute time killer until the next game finishes up. I
agree. This was way more fun than I expected it to be, and I do have to say, the first time we played this game, I had a feeling that I'm very thankful I don't often have in games, which I just could not get my head around the idea that the number on the card that I was putting down was the amount of points I was getting, not the number on the table. And it wasn't late the first time we were playing this. It was just like, you need to understand the cards in one direction, and I was looking at them sort of as the inverse of that.
Yeah.
But once I figured it out and got my brain all fixed out, because I don't know what was wrong with me, it is super fun. And like you said, the rules are so easy to teach. You do need a little bit of space. This is not one of those things that you're going to bring to one of those circular pub tables if you're going to play this out. It does have limited components, but you do need enough space to build the spokes out on the board, because if your card would go off the edge of the table, you can't place it.
Nope.
You also can't overlap any other cards, so you are going to want to create sort of a little spread out structure to it. But I mean, we played this on regular gaming banquet table type things, the 2.5 by 6 foot tables. And it worked just fine, and we taught it to a number of people because we played a couple of games at CONEX, and we played a couple of games at our meetups and at our house, and I just really like it.
Yeah, this is definitely a standout from Haba, who honestly does a lot of really good games, and I'm excited to see them moving into this space and getting away from just the kids' games, because they've got a good team and they know how to make good games.
I mean, you say that, but you could totally play this with kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not... like, you're not doing anything that's super complicated and you couldn't teach kids. Now, if you have kids that are little whirlwinds, maybe this is not the great game for them, because the cards do need to stay in a certain position when they're placed down. But if you've got, like, elementary school age kids, this is so simple that you could definitely play it with them.
Yeah. All right, that is CONEX. Then we moved on to playing Fortune City, a 2018 release from Big Fun Games. This actually just came out at Gen Con, and our friend up there, Matt Wolf, had picked it up at Essen, so we had a chance to play it. 2 to 4 players, 30 to 45 minutes, designed by Chi-Fan Chen. This is a game of tile placement, track moving up, and poor financial strategy.
It's true.
Side note, Danielle did a lot of the show notes for this one, and we always put in something funny for that third one, and I did not read any of these, and I'm hoping that there is some more fun later on.
I don't remember if there is.
But yes, very true.
But this is based on the app Fortune City, which is, if you've ever used something like Mint, this is a expense tracking app where you are trying to log all your purchases and your income so that you can theoretically keep track of where your finances are. They've made that into a board game, and in the board game, you're doing sort of similar to what you're doing in the app. You are placing buildings out of different types of expenses. So at the beginning of a round, you're going to draw a number of tiles off the stack, and they're going to be different types of buildings. Then you're going to draw a bunch of workers and place them below the buildings. They may not be matched up to the tiles that they go with. Then the players are going to take turns drafting tile and worker pairs and placing them into their construction area. You are going to pay for the tile when you take it, and then you're going to have to pay again to build it with your money into your city. And by building it into your city, that's how you get any kind of benefit from it. You can't place a similar type of building next to the same building. So I can't put a pink building next to a pink building. But realistically, there's enough open spaces that I don't think that ever came up as a problem for anyone in our 4-player game. You're also going to be, like I said, placing workers into these buildings. And when you place the worker in, that's when you're going to get the benefit. And the benefit is that you are going to move up on the track correlated with the color of building that you've put the worker into. Some of the tracks are going to increase the income that you get every round, so you're going to have more money to buy buildings and to place them into your city. Some of them are just going to give you points, and some of them, I think, are going to increase the movement of your truck.
Beep, beep.
You have a truck when you start the game, and it is theoretically why it matters where you put the buildings in your city, because you're going to be moving your truck around, and when you build each of these buildings, they're going to either give you a benefit or a hindrance. The hindrance will be trash. This is generally on the lower value buildings. I think there might be some on some of the higher value buildings, but all of the $2 buildings are going to give you a trash. The benefits are going to be either a diamond, which is worth a point at the end of the game, or possibly some coins that you'll be able to get and to use to buy more buildings and build more buildings and all that type of thing. You're going to be able to move your truck a certain number of spaces, which, like I said, you can increase by building, I think it's blue buildings. And if you have any garbage that your truck has not been on the space to by the end of the game, that's going to lose you points. So you're going to want to be moving your truck so it collects all the garbage and also so it collects all the benefits, because if you leave the benefits on the road, if you leave a diamond on the road, you don't get a point for it. Also, don't do that. That's really bad jewelry maintenance. But that is the whole game. You're going to keep going until you run out of tiles to place out for people to buy, and then you are going to count up the amount of points people have from their diamonds and from the track that gives you points, and some of the other tracks, as you get very high up on them, will give you additional points. You will also get points, I believe, for the buildings that you've built. So if you've built really cheap buildings, not only are you going to have a potential for having that trash that's going to lose you points, but you won't get as many points at the end of the game. And whoever has the most money wins.
Yeah.
One of the things I actually left out is there's also an opportunity to take a credit card if you build a bank. And when you build a bank and get a credit card, you immediately fill it up. It gives you 3 silver coins, which are the main currency. And you get 1 gold coin. A gold coin can be exchanged for any purchasing cost in the early part of the game. So if you're going to buy a 4 coin building and put it into your construction area, you can just pay the gold coin. Or if you have a building in your construction area and you'd like to place it out onto your map, you can just pay the 1 gold coin instead of having to pay the cost in silver coins. You can build a second bank, which is going to refill the silver coins on your credit card. If there's still any left there, you don't get that additionally. If you had 1 left, you'll still just refill it up to 3, and you'll get a second gold coin. So it makes the most sense as soon as you get that credit card to spend the silver coins off the credit card, immediately max out your credit card. Because if you build a second bank and there's anything left there, you're actually losing income. So that's this game. And I do want to touch on something. I had installed Fortune City back before Gen Con. I think I talked about this in our hype list episode, that I was excited about it. It looked really cute. Like, I was interested to see how this became a board game. Because it's not the kind of app I would have assumed would make a board game. So I reinstalled it on my phone because I had really flaked on it around Gen Con. I did 1 day of tracking it. I was like, no, this is dumb. I reinstalled it on my phone because my initial thought was this board game teaches you terrible money management. Immediately max out your credit card, spend all your money, get all these workers that you don't need. I was like, this is bad. This app has to be better than this. And after about a week of using the app, I uninstalled it. And I was like, no, this app teaches you bad money management. Because the point of the game is that when you log your expenses, you gain buildings, and you can merge the buildings, which are going to increase your prestige and allow you to get more people. You have to log a certain number of expenses initially in order to get your city out of the tutorial thing. And really, it's just encouraging you to spend money in all different kinds of places. And that's how you get a more interesting city, and you have more fun in the game, and you can get more people into your city. It's just telling you to spend a lot of money. And if you log a lot of the same thing, it's not going to progress your city in as fun a way. So if you have lots of income, that's not as good as having some income and spending some money on food and spending some money on transport. And I was like, no, this is just dumb. I'm just going to look at my bank account and make sure it's good, and then we're going to be done. And I'm going to uninstall this because it makes me want to buy things. And I'm sure, based on what Matt said about the fact that it came with a Taiwanese credit card application in the game of the board game, I have a feeling that was sort of the point.
As for the gameplay, it was fine. Like you said earlier in the discussion there, the placement of tiles never was an issue. They say you're not supposed to place things next to each other, and I guess that kind of matches up with the you have to spend your money in different ways in the game kind of thing. But you don't have the same stuff come up constantly, so you're not going to be buying the same stuff again and again. And then with the truck movement itself, it talks about, oh yeah, your truck can never double back on it, but if you just build in a zigzag or in a straight line, your truck's just going to continue to move in the order that you placed your tiles. So it really was never an issue. I don't think anybody had anything they didn't pick up in this game. But mechanically, it was fine. I think it was fun. The art's cute, and you get to place tiles in front of you, and yeah, that's the best I have to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little frustrating because the tiles come out and the workers come out in random order. At the beginning, your first tile that you're going to pick up is going to have a matching worker for it, but it's entirely possible that there are no matching workers for the entire rest of the game, that they're just off, and you're trying to, at that point, plan for, okay, well, I would like to buy a green building later, so I'll get whatever has a green worker, but I don't have the worker that goes with the building, so that building is going to sit empty until I can get that worker. And maybe, since turn order rotates, maybe the next time there's only one green building and you're the 4th player and you don't get that, so you still got this green worker sitting in your park getting a truancy ticket or something. And he just sits there the whole game because you never get a green building, or you never get the worker to activate the building that you had to take to get the green worker. It did seem just kind of random. It was cute, which is certainly its selling point, I think, if you see it on the shelf, you're going to be like, oh, this looks really fun. It's got bright colors. The art is really cute. This one's a pass for me.
Yeah, Fortune City. It exists. It's cute. Don't learn life lessons from it.
Yeah, don't bother with the app either.
But I am glad we had a chance to play it because it was something that we wanted to play at Gen Con, and I think they had like 10 copies, and they were gone, 2 minutes after the con opened. So, yeah, that game exists.
Well, those 10 people had to max out their credit cards immediately.
Okay, so moving on. Next two games we have actually talked about in the past, so I'd say we just go quickly through them.
Sure.
First, we got Dice Town, 2009, released from Matago, 2 to 5 players, 45 minutes, designed by Bruno Catala and Ludovic Malblanc, with art by Piero, dice rolling, set collection, and being a land thief. This is a game that I generally bring to marathons because it's a good high player count game. In fact, it works better at 5 and 6 players, but I will tell you, one of the pitfalls of games that are like that is that if you forget to sort the cards beforehand and take the expansion content out, oops, I'm sorry. I forgot to take all the expansion crap out, and like a third of the expansion content was in the play for the game, and we kept having cards come up and just be like, what is this card? Like, oh, that wasn't supposed to be in there. Let me get that. Yeah. The multiplying land claim tiles, which worked out fine in the game we had, but like the set collection one, if you have like 5 of these, you get 30 points or whatever. Those are an expansion as well, and I forgot about that.
That's fine though.
But what it did do was prolong the length of the game longer than I wanted it, because if you got more land tile claim cards. Real quick about the game, you're forming poker hands by rolling dice. You can pay a little extra money to keep dice between turns if you want to keep more than one. Kind of like you're just going to be keeping one for free and hoping to get full houses or straight, stuff like that. And then depending on who wins the majority on each roll of the dice, you may get some gold nuggets or some action cards or the land claim tiles, or maybe you get the sheriff thing and you get to break ties. It's fun, and I just really enjoy this game. We talked about this back in episode 41 and episode 45, so it's come up in both, awesome uses of dice and six-player games? Yeah, so this is the kind of game that is always around for me. And I'm really excited that it just got reprinted by Matago, Asmodee, that whole zone, in I think last Gen Con. Not this year, but last year. So there's a new edition of it out, and they put out a new expansion. So the game still has life, and I'm really excited about that because it was out of print for a while there.
It is one of those games that's really easy to teach to people, and there is a space that if you don't win any of the majorities that you're trying to go for, there is a space that gives you an extra benefit depending on what you rolled. So even if you're playing with somebody who's new and they don't really 100% get it at first, they're still going to be getting a benefit, so they're going to stay in the game. So by the time you get to like turn 3, when they figure out what they're doing, they're not going to be in a super tight position. So it's great for gaming marathons like this where you're maybe teaching people who've not played it before.
I always find that this game also, when we play it at a marathon or a big event, something like that, people get into it. I feel like you draw into the thematics of the Wild West poker pretty quickly. You do a lot of shifty eyes and looking around and just kind of like hiding your dice and, that kind of stuff.
And they give you a cup to hide them.
Yeah, so Dice Town, great game. It's available now. I encourage everybody to have this in their collection if they do have higher player count sessions. Other one we played that's in this kind of games we've talked about a lot before, Betrayal at House on the Hill, 2004, Avalon Hill, 3 to 6 players, 60 minutes, Rob Davio, art by Dennis Crabapple McLean, Christopher Miller, and Peter Whitley. This is a game of traders. That's the only word I put in for this one. Yeah. We talked about it back in episode 32.
Yeah, this is a game that I'm sure many people have heard of before. You are essentially building a haunted house and moving around the haunted house. As you build it out, different things are going to happen. You're going to acquire different items. There are going to be different omens. And at some point, you are going to roll, when you draw an omen card, you roll these dice. And if you ever roll higher on the dice than you have existing omens, if you ever roll lower on the dice than you have existing omen cards, then the haunt is going to occur. Somebody is going to be the titular betrayer, and they are going to take the trader book and go off and read the scenario that is dictated by where you had this reveal, and they're going to read what their goal is, and everybody else is going to be still the heroes, and they're going to read from their situation, and from then on out, it's a one versus many game. Generally, I think there are some haunts that aren't necessarily one versus many, but it is predominantly a one versus many game, where the trader is trying to fulfill all the objectives that they got in their book, and the heroes are trying to do what they're supposed to do, and the two don't really 100% know what the other is trying to do. Mm-hmm. This game actually worked out really well. A lot of times you'll play a game of Betrayal, and either depending on who the trader is, if they're a new player, they may not be super familiar, and they can't ask anyone about what they're doing because nobody else knows what's going on. Mm-hmm. Or just the way the haunts are written, some of them are kind of busted, especially with the expansion content. We found that they can be quite busted. But this one actually worked out really well. The person who was the trader understood like all the rules that they were given, and everybody on the hero team understood what we were supposed to be doing, and we were able to just go through the game and play it, and it was actually a fun time.
Yeah. I think that this is the first time in my memory of this game that we've played a haunt that wasn't horribly broken, and I really enjoyed it.
Well.
Or maybe not just horribly broken, but like wildly unbalanced or unclear. And I'm glad, like I'm really glad that I had this experience finally with Betrayal, because this is what I've always wanted it to be. I will say we were extremely lucky on the good guys side in that we had everybody pretty much exactly where they needed to be. This is one of those collect a bunch of items and take them to a place. And of the 4 items, the 3 good side players were all right next to one of them. And in addition to that, I was playing Flash Gordon, who has a very high speed. Not Flash Gordon.
No, Flash Gordon's
Flash
somebody
Gordon's
else.
an actual thing. But anyway, whoever the fast guy is. What?
Flash Gordon's not an actual thing.
Okay. So, I had a high speed, and the very first item I drew was the revolver, which allows you to roll dice based on speed. And then
That's how guns work, right?
Yeah, you're very fast drawing at the revolver. But then I also got an item that allowed me to, I think, increase my attack rolls by 1. So I was just booking it around the entire the house, and I was able to shoot people shoot the bad enemies from a room away with 6 or 7 dice every single time, and we kind of made short work of this one. But it was fun. Yeah.
I do want to say that the tiles in the expansion, because we were playing with the Widow's Walk expansion, the haunt we had didn't end up being one of the Widow's Walk expansion haunts, but the tiles made it a lot easier to move around the house, because a lot of the tiles that were added in the Widow's Walk connected you to different floors a lot better. Like there's one that allowed you to go, the spiral staircase is the one I'm thinking of, that allowed us to get down to the basement before we had gotten the basement stairs, which was really nice. There was a lot more fluidity in the movement in those new expansion tiles, which as a good guy, I found very helpful. I'm sure the girl who was playing the trader probably found that less helpful.
I will say also, it's nice in a way that we didn't have somebody just like, oh, you're in the basement, and you're lost in the basement the entire game. And I think that the other guy we were playing with, he got stuck in the locked room and was able to get out in one turn. Unlike, I think the previous time we talked about this, I got stuck in the locked room. I literally rolled my dice for 4 turns, because that's how long it took for me to play. I rolled all of them at once, and I went and I played another game, waiting for it to come back around for me to be able to do something again. So it's good. Like, Betrayal's nice when it works, but it doesn't work so often.
But it did this time.
But it did this time. I'm so, yeah.
Let's not drag it this time. We enjoyed this time.
Yeah. But Betrayal Legacy, I think, is also worth mentioning. That just came out last week. I did see the box, and then I turned away.
Yeah, that's not a legacy game we're going to be playing. We currently got a couple of them going on, so I think we're good with that. But it was really nice to have a good Betrayal experience. I know we played it a lot in our group for a while, but I think it was when you were traveling quite a bit. So I have had previous good Betrayal experiences, but I would say it's like a 50-50 chance. This time was good.
Yeah.
Especially like coming right after the Halloween season, this was a fun little Halloween extension.
Betrayal at House on the Hill. If you like it, you probably like it. We also played Catch the Moon that we just talked about in episode 86. That's the ladder stacking game that is all the rage right now. And we did also play Passeraya Supermarket Manager, which we are not going to talk about now, because that would be a spoiler for the next episode. But about this time, we took a break to have some dinner, and I think that is a good time for us to take a break in this Talking About Games segment and come back for the rest. Yes?
Sure. In Champions of Midgard, you competed to become the Jarl of your village, protecting it from Draugrs and trolls. But any good Viking knows that the best defense is a good offense.
In the upcoming Kickstarter from Grey Fox Games, Reavers of Midgard, you will venture out from your village, recruiting the most fearsome warriors, the Reavers, to assist you in putting a mean hurt on your neighbors. Reavers bring new recruits, increase your options in battle, and lead your fighting ships. Through their help and with strategic choices about when is the best time to make your moves so that you and only you reap the benefits, you will become the most glorious Viking around.
Especially since Gunnar went to Mars.
Well, yes.
Reavers of Midgard hits Kickstarter on Thursday, November 1st.
Check it out along with all the other great Grey Fox games at greyfoxgames.com.
Grey Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted.
So, after dinner, we decided that this is the perfect time to play some very heavy games. We started off with Agra, that we talked about at the very beginning of the year. This is a 2017 release from Quinid Games, 2 to 4 players in quote-unquote 90 to 120 minutes. Really?
No.
No. Designed by Michael Keller, with art by Michael Menzel, a worker placement, area control, and resource management game.
No, in fairness, I feel like we got it down to 120 minutes when we did the high-gravity review of Agra. Mm-hmm. Like, we were getting 3-player games out real quick at that point. But it having been 6 months since we'd last played Agra and having one new player, this was closer to 3 hours.
Very true. So I'm not going to go through a full rules description of Agra because we do not have that much time in the episode, but if you would like to go back and check out episode 68, you can absolutely do that and get all of our thoughts on this game. I think to this date, it's the longest we've talked about a single game. We talked about that for almost an hour on the review on that one. But basically what you're doing is you are going to be generating resources on the main central board and then processing those goods into nicer goods and then using all of those goods in various combinations to send off to some notables that want specific goods, and you get powers off of those cards. You're sending them up to a main top central area where you're filling orders for different guilds. You're also sending some goods off to the Emperor as well because he will give you points for that. And let's just leave it at that because the game gets a lot more complex than that. But this is a heavy game that we haven't had a chance to play since January, February, and I was surprised at how well it came back to me, which is something that you kind of don't expect with heavy games, and maybe it's just because when we were doing the high-gravity reviews for that, I was so deep into that rulebook, and we played it such in a short period of time that it really got... it got into my head, and I really feel like I understand the intricacies of that game, at least once we get 2 or 3 turns in.
Okay, yeah, I did not remember the rules. Like, if you put it out on the table, I would have been like, what do I do now? Once you started to explain it to me, again, from the rulebook and from your knowledge, it did come back. What I will say is, apparently, the strategy did not come back, because you had more points in this game than myself and the other player combined. I think you had the same number of points as our total combined score. So this definitely came back to you better than it came back to me. And the third player we were playing with, apparently I was playing at a new player level because he and I were very close in score. Mm-hmm. And you were just like sailing away with it. But it is still a fun game. I really like this game a lot. Mm-hmm.
I still have kind of some of the same complaints with the way that the board is laid out. I think what I saw about it. Okay, so the graphic design on the board and the background of the board, I'll just talk about the board itself, is freaking gorgeous. This is some of my favorite board art in games, period. I love this board. I love the way it looks on the table. This game is huge, and it feels as big as the strategy in the game you're playing. But then with the graphic design on the production and processing spaces, everything is kind of faded, and it's really hard to see where some of the lines go. And even after playing this game, 5 times this year, I'm still trying to remember, like, okay, what good goes to what? And I was kind of frustrated that that's still a problem. I honestly kind of wonder if those spaces were a lot darker, would I be able to see everything clearer? Because kind of in that kind of halfway space, I actually found myself paying less attention to the art on the board just to try to see the graphic design a little bit better. I'm wondering if bolder spaces meant that it would have been able to appreciate the board art more because it wouldn't have had to struggle so hard to read the dang action spaces.
It's possible. I vaguely remember when we talked about this, having played it a bunch of times, you definitely get used to it if you play it frequently. Mm-hmm. But that's saying that you play it a bunch of times in a month, and this is a weight of game and a time commitment of game that you're probably not going to get it to the table that frequently. So just having those transition arrows be a little bit darker, and the spaces themselves, because one of the mechanics in the game is there are 2 figures on the board, a builder and an elephant, so a merchant and a builder, that move down the spaces and then sort of they cycle to the right. And if you can't see where the spaces are, it makes it very difficult to move those pieces, the number of spaces you need to move them. At the beginning of the game, it's easy because there's only a certain number of spaces unlocked, but as you get towards the end of the game, trying to see which spaces are unlocked and which spaces the pieces need to move to in which order does become quite a bit more difficult. Mm-hmm. Also, I do want to just touch back on how you said it does have great table presence. We had 3 or 4 people come over and just stop and look at the game, and they weren't really familiar with it at all, but they were like, wow, that's gorgeous. What is this? So it does have amazing table presence, especially with that sort of slanted top board at the top where you're placing your guild orders and moving up on the guild tracks and sending goods to the Emperor.
Mm-hmm. So I love the fact that, like, the graphic design is the biggest thing we have to complain about this game, because, like, I enjoy this so much. I think 3 players is the perfect spot for this. I think at 4 players, you're going to have too much downtime, because even at 3 players, I mean, this was still a 2.5 it was right around 3 hours, including kind of the refresher teach. And I feel like it's exactly what I want out of a heavy game at 3 players. You have decisions, you're not kind of waiting forever, because while I'm, in the downtime of other players' turns, I'm still thinking about my strategy, and honestly, it takes about that long for me to figure out what the strategy I'm going to take is going to be. And I think everybody has the same level of, okay, it's my turn, it's going to take me 5 minutes to decide how I'm going to do this thing. So I do appreciate that. It's balanced in that way.
Yeah, there is definitely a bunch of pre-planning, so when it does get to your turn, if you've done pre-planning and everything went the way you thought it was going to go, you should be fairly ready to start your turn and make sure that you go through all the different steps that the turn entails. But there is a little bit of likelihood that somebody has either kicked out a worker that you planned on using for meditation points, or taken a space that you don't necessarily want to give them additional favor tokens. So there is a little bit of reworking of your turns on a lot of turns if things didn't go as expected. Mm-hmm. It's never going to completely destroy the planning that you've done, but you may need to evaluate whether something is worth doing at this point, or you want to wait a little bit longer to do it. So there's a little bit of tactical manipulation to your strategy, but mostly this is a strategy game and you're going to be planning it out throughout the whole round as you're waiting for it to come back to you.
Yeah, I was in a way kind of bummed that this released so late in 2017 because we didn't get to include it in our 2017 recap at the beginning of the year, but it did come back in when we did our 2017 Redux mid-year, and this one was my 5th game of the year 2017.
And my 8th, so yeah, it definitely got a showing on that list.
So yeah, I absolutely love Agra, and honestly, if I were to do my 2017 Redux again, I would not be surprised if it moved even further up.
It's possible.
Yeah. I like a big, heavy game, and I'm excited that playing it again, I still enjoyed this one a whole heck of a lot.
I'm also glad that we played it early enough that we weren't absolute garbage when we were playing it. We played this like 8 o'clock, which is about as late as I would have wanted to have started this game. If we had started it at 1 in the morning, this would have been Altiplano all over again when we played Altiplano at Geekway, and we started it at midnight, and that was a terrible idea.
I'm glad we got normal plays of Altiplano in, because that did turn out to be a very good game.
Yeah, and Agra is an even better game.
Very true. All right, well, yeah, if you want to play Agra and you're coming to one of our board game meetups, probably not the best time for it, but other times, absolutely, I will always throw down and play Agra if I have 3 to 4 hours to do so. Moving on, quick game of Race for the Galaxy between games. I don't think we've ever actually talked about Race for the Galaxy before.
We talked about the app a couple of times, because the app came out in like episode 38 or something like that of our podcast. But Race for the Galaxy is a game where you are trying to take different phases of the turn depending on what people decide to endorse as their action that they want to take. So maybe if Jake and I are playing a game in a 2-player game, you each pick 2 phases. So maybe I pick Explore and Settle, and maybe he picks Develop and Settle. That means we're going to do Explore, Develop, and Settle. You're going to be taking those actions, and the cards that you draw into your hand are not only the cards that you can play into your tableau, because this is a tableau building game, but they are also the goods that are generated on your planets come from the card deck, and they are the money that you're spending to play developments and to settle non-military planets out onto your tableau. Mm-hmm. So you really need to be careful of what's in your hand, how much you have, how much you want to spend, how much you want to play out as a tableau card. And this goes until somebody takes all the points, or somebody puts 12 things out on their tableau. Then you count up the number of points somebody has, and whoever has the most points wins.
Winners.
People are very critical of the iconography on this game because it is a little complicated. I will say it is a little complicated. Mm-hmm. This is one of those games that I really would prefer to play with people that already know how to play it, but that obviously leads to a problem. If nobody's willing to teach new people how to play this game, then nobody's ever going to learn how to play this game. I got to play this as a 2-player game with you twice. I think we went through it real mm-hmm. quick, and that was perfect. It was a nice palate cleanser after Agra. I got to feel a little bit better about my gaming after you whooped me at Agra.
You annihilated me in Race
twice.
For the Galaxy. Yeah.
But it is a super fun game. If you are looking to pick up the base game of this, I think it's like $25 because it's just cards and some chits. If you get the first expansion, it's a little better. Beyond that, you can pick and choose your expansions as you like.
Yeah. I think that they either just did or are about to release the second edition of that base that just has some, like, card errata and I think a few extra starting planets, which is nice. So maybe look into that before you buy it. But frankly, just get the app and then, decide from
don't.
there. No, get the app if you want to learn it. I think
Oh, okay.
the app is actually really good for learning because it has a nice tutorial and it'll explain it to you.
As long as you're going to play it on a tablet. If you are going to play
yeah.
this on a phone and you don't know how to play Race for the Galaxy, don't play it because then you're trying to learn the iconography off something that is really too small for the amount of cards that you're going to have to look at. This is one of those apps that I talked about, I think, an episode or two ago, where it's a really good implementation, but if you're looking at it on the wrong device, it can just absolutely destroy your playing experience. I love Race for the Galaxy, but I never play it on my phone because it's... God, that's so small. So tiny small.
Yep, Race for the Galaxy.
So tiny small.
So very small. How did you feel playing it on physical cards again after so long playing just the app?
Dude, I play this game all the time. I just play it with Dan. I don't play it with you.
Okay, very well.
I play this game like once every 2 or 3 months, and if you've listened to any of our Time Stories episodes, or you listen to our Essen episode from, I think, 2 years ago when Dan went to Essen,
It's been a while.
you guys have heard from Dan before, and he's in our game group, and he and I will knock out a game of this or at a game night with a couple of other players and just have a great time because we both know how to play it really well, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things where the game goes smoothly because you know what you're doing. So yeah, I felt great about it, but it wasn't a special treat for me.
I did a bad job at Race for the Galaxy.
It's all right, I did a bad job at Agra.
It was a very good palate cleanser. And so it was about 11 o'clock that we got to our next game. And I'm mentioning the time that we started this game because it will become relevant later in the game, or in the conversation. We got a review copy of Escape Tales The Awakening, which is a Essen release from our friends over at Board and Dice. This game plays 1 to 4 players in, the box says, 180 to 300 minutes, which seems like a scary number, but again, I'll get back to that in a second. This is designed by Danielle. How about you do the Polish names, please?
The designers are Jacob Kaban, Matt Dembeck. I screwed up the word Matt.
Matt Dembeck.
Matt Dembeck. Got one. Bartosz Izakowski, and the artists are Magdalena Klepacz and Paweł Niziołek.
All right. Thank you for taking that Duolingo class.
I probably still messed it up, but you know what? I gave it a shot.
Yes, you did. So this is an escape room in a box style game, and it is laden with puzzles and also a very heavy narrative style as well. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure on steroids. No, that's not really. It's maybe like if you had like exit the game or unlock, but with a much heavier story, or maybe if you took Time Stories and made it like
It's like
Puzzle
if Unlock and
Blitzkrieg?
Time Stories had a baby.
Yeah, okay, I'm down with that.
And that baby should have had a content warning.
Okay, yeah, so let's say that up front. It addresses some heavy stuff. You are dealing with demons, you are dealing with death, and a few other things like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, illness and suicide and images of suicide type stuff. It's definitely some heavy stuff.
Yeah, but if you go in knowing that, which we did, we read, some of the book and stuff beforehand, and you're okay with that, and you like puzzles, and you want a lot of them, holy crap, this game is jam-packed with puzzles and ideas and stuff like that.
Oh, I just figured out the other thing that it feels like.
What?
It feels like Dragonholt, because it's got that same
Oh, okay.
numbered passage book where you're going through the story, and depending on what you do, it's going to tell you to go read a certain passage, which is going to have certain results. So it's got, like you said, it's got that choose your own adventure in this very similar way to the way you're going through Dragonholt. So if you've played that, you'll be sort of familiar with this mechanic and the way it's working.
So Dragonholt plus Time Stories plus Unlock/Exit, Puzzle Blitzkrieg, tons and tons of things you have to work out.
Good puzzles, too.
High narrative kind of level to it. And, like, wow.
Yes.
That's kind of how I feel about this. And I'm struggling to kind of talk more about it. So let me just talk about how the game works. So you have a board-ish kind of thing in front of you. And as you are starting the game, you're going to read a few passages in the book, and it's going to tell you to draw cards off of several decks. You have location deck cards, and you're going to take generally two location cards, and flip them up onto this main board. And the way that it lays out, each of those cards has kind of divided into 6 squares. And you also have a smaller card, a map card, that you're going to be placing tokens on, showing which part of that 12 grid space of those location cards you're going to investigate. when you go to investigate one of those 12 squares in a location, you're going to read a passage out of the book. It'll probably tell you to draw some cards. And kind of like an unlock, you're going to get these cards, and some of them might be a puzzle, or maybe they'll be a piece or a key or an item that you need, or maybe it'll just give you some other story bit or tell you to do something. And you're going to be looking at your cards, plus the location cards, plus thinking about the way that things interact with each other to solve puzzles that will then generate other stories for you to go to.
This game also has an app, and that's how you're going to be solving the puzzles. It works very similar to the unlock puzzle solving thing, where you're going to be inputting the solution to the puzzle. One of the things I really liked about the way the cards were designed and worked with the app, when you go to solve a specific puzzle, each of the cards has an icon that indicates which puzzle it is part of, or if it's not part of a puzzle, it will have a different icon, and they're sorted that way. But when you go to solve, say, the puzzle that has, maybe it's got a star on it, they're all a little more complicated than that, but for this example, that works fine. It'll say, this involves 2 game cards and location L17 or something like that. So if you've got 2 cards with that symbol, and you are at the location that it seems, you know you have everything to solve the puzzle, which I really like, because a lot of times in puzzle games, you start, or at least I know our group, starts second guessing whether we're missing something, and we don't have everything we need to solve a puzzle, or we are missing something and we think we don't, and we think we have the answer. Mm-hmm. So this tells you, like, you either have everything you need or you don't have everything you need, and if you have everything you need, you can just look at that and work it out until you get the puzzle. There are some solutions, it'll tell you the number of inputs that you need for the solution, but they're not always numbers. Sometimes they're letters, sometimes they're letters and numbers. So it gives you at least a direction as to what you're supposed to be doing, because one of the things, speaking of puzzles, I started some of the puzzles in Journal 29 a while ago, and the problem I was having was that is also an app puzzle solution type of thing, and I was having trouble finding the format that I needed to input the word into the solution. So the problem wasn't that I hadn't solved the puzzle, the problem was I didn't know exactly how I wanted to input it into the computer. And in this case, it tells you exactly what you need to input. You need 6 characters, and you know that you have all the pieces. So while it gives you really tricky and interesting puzzles, it doesn't try to trick you with the way you input it into the system. And I think that's great, because solving a puzzle is fun. Trying to figure out the puzzle of how to input the puzzle solution is not fun.
I also really appreciated the pacing of the game that we played. We started off, obviously, at the beginning, which is one of the dumbest sentences I've ever said on a podcast.
In this game, the water goes downhill.
Okay, fine. But so we start off in this kind of, honestly, a training scenario room that shows us the way that our action tokens are going to work and the way that things can interact. And there's a mechanic in there that as you use up your action tokens, you have to draw off this doom deck, which is generally, you think it's going to be bad things. So it gives you, it manages the flow of the game for you. And I really loved the way that intro room got us into the way that every card that we're going to deal with would work. And then we move on to the next room, and it gets a little bit more interesting the way things are going to interact. To the point where maybe the 4th or 5th location, I don't remember how many we got to, probably it felt like in the 4-ish or something like that. Mm-hmm. We were getting to the point where cards were interacting in ways that blew my mind. And it got us to the point where we did not realize we were playing this game for at least 3 hours.
Yeah, I would never have guessed that. I would have said we were playing it for maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah, but we had been stuck on this one puzzle for a little while, and our friend Eric Booth from the Shuffle podcast had wandered up at that time, and we were going to try to get a game together, and we were playing with these cards, and I was like, let's just pack it up and figure out where we're at this. And then I just had like this moment of just like, oh, I get it, and I just started whipping out these cards and putting stuff in different ways, and it just felt so freaking cool. And I'm so glad I figured out that puzzle then, because I feel like if we went back and started with that puzzle, either we would get it in 10 seconds or we would just be like, well, I don't have a dang clue what we're going to do.
Yeah, you're still going to have to explain that particular puzzle to me, because I was in the pack-up phase at that point.
Wow.
Because Eric he's like, I just want to play one game before I leave. I was like, okay, I'll start packing it up. This game also does have a really cool save system where it gives you a chart where you write down, the locations you're on, the cards that you have, all of the amount of tokens that you have. It really gives you a way to just pull everything out, just set it to where you were, and keep going. It's not like the Seventh Continent save system where you just start like anew.
Stacking cards in weird places.
Well, no, but like you list it all out, and you just got these decks of cards, and you're like, okay, we're here, and this is what we've got, and you can just set it right back up. I have no doubt that when we go to set that back up, it is going to take like 3 seconds to do.
So, like we said, this is from Board and Dice. They're a Polish company. I have good news for you and for the rest of the listeners.
For me?
While we were talking, I checked online. It is up for pre-order right now through Miniature Market.
Oh, nice.
How much do you think this game will cost? Thinking about how much content we had and the stuff that there was in there, and we're probably about halfway through it.
Is it at Miniature Market pricing or Board and Dice pricing?
Let's say MSRP.
No, that's not what I meant. Let's say $50.
$35 MSRP.
What the heck?
$35 MSRP.
Go buy this game, y'all.
So
unless you have an objection to the content, in which case, please do not go buy this game.
But like that blew my mind right there. And if you look online, I'm sure you're gonna be able to find a good pre-order price.
At Miniature Market for $35.
Yeah. No, it's cheaper at Miniature Market.
Oh,
That's $35 MSRP. They have it for like $26.
oh, go
Wow.
buy this game.
So this is something that we've had that we wanted to get to review copy for a little while, and I think we do a spoiler episode on this one when we are done. Are you down with that?
Maybe. Let's see.
Maybe.
We're only halfway through the story. Let's see.
I do want to say another thing, and this is from reading kind of the documentation on it and learning a little bit more about Escape Tales. This is also designed to be replayable because there is branching story in this. So the story that we go through, the stuff that we learn, might not be your experience, and there might be puzzles we never get to. There's content that we'll never get to.
Yeah, I feel like it's not a terrible spoiler because it happens in the tutorial, but in the first room that you're in, you need to make a choice between two different toys. That doesn't really spoil much at all. And you pick one. And as you go later into the story, there were definitely points we experienced where it was like, if you have this item, which was one of them, then you do this. If not, don't. And if you do this, if you have this item, do something else. And we're never going to know what happens for the stuff that is not the toy we chose. And that's really interesting. I mean, I'm not sure how much I'm going to go back and replay all of it. I might just go back and replay the sections that I know had a choice, but it's entirely possible that there are going to be huge variations. Now, there are a limited number of locations, so I know while it may be branching, it can't be a whole different set of places. You've only got like 18 location cards, which is 9 locations.
But remember that the map is not one of the location cards, so different map cards on the same locations are going to get you different places.
Oh, that's true.
Whoa.
Yeah, then it definitely might be worth playing through again with, or at least watch. Like, we might want to do what we do with our time stories, which is give this to somebody else, watch them play through it, see what they do. Because obviously we're going to know how to solve the puzzles, so going through it again won't have that fun, like, how do we solve this puzzle? Be like, oh, we do this. This is the answer.
But this is definitely one that I want to have other people in our game group play. And frankly, we have a preview copy. I'm going to pick up a new copy of this game to get the final production.
Cool.
And I think everybody's okay with that. I'm hoping that they have some of them at PAX Unplugged. I'm not 100% sure. There is a Board and Dice booth on the backside of the Grey Fox Games booth.
Ooh.
So I might be walking right over there and grabbing all of the copies of Escape Tales.
Don't buy them all.
No, I'll buy one or something like that. But
that's fun, though.
What I will say, if you are okay with the content and you love puzzles, this is an amazing, probably I would say 1 to 3 player experience. I want to have 2 or 3 players to bounce ideas off of. Like, that was another thing. With 2 players, we each had puzzles that we got.
Yeah.
It's not like you got all the puzzles or I got all the puzzles or all the puzzles were obvious to all of us. There were a number of things that I still don't really understand how you figured out. And like you were saying, the very final one that I was working on, you did not understand what I was doing. And I
wasn't paying attention to what you were doing.
But, okay, I'm going to calm down. I'm going to tell you, please go get a copy of Escape Tales: The Awakening if you are okay with the content. And I would not be surprised if we were talking about this game a lot on our first episode of 2019.
Or perhaps Escape Tales : something else.
Man, I hope so.
That'd be awesome.
Jeez. I feel as excited about Escape Tales as the first time I played Time Stories.
Okay, I'm close, but I'm not there.
Yeah.
That being said, we haven't finished this, so
All right.
Maybe I will be.
All right, that is Escape Tales The Awakening, and that is our moment of gushing. So, once we put the Escape Tales box away, Eric Booth was still there, and he taught us how to play.
Good that he didn't leave while we were cleaning up.
He taught us how to play Koi, which is a 2018 release from Smirk and Laughter. It plays 1 to 4 players in 40 to 60 minutes. This is designed by Bill Lasik, art by Christy Freeman, with action programming, grid movement, and pretty fish.
It does have pretty fish. So in Koi, you are going to start as a fish, and you are going to place yourself out on a hex board. It looks a lot like Seikatsu, if you've ever seen a Seikatsu board. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have a bunch of cards in your hand, and the cards are going to be programmed movement of your fish. Each round of the game is going to have a weather condition. I think you're going to play through about 7 rounds of the game, and you are going to flip over the weather condition. It's going to give you a rule for this game, and then you're going to play out cards from your hand. You will play out as many as you want on your turn to move your fish for the season. Now, you may be able to place out additional obstacles on the board with some of the cards. You may be able to place out different point scoring items, like a frog, which you can eat as a fish to get some points. And the object of the game is going to be to eat the frogs and dragonflies, which are placed out on the lily pads of the board. And you're doing so by moving your fish according to these programming cards. The programming cards have 2 different types of movement. There is mandatory movement, which is a black arrow, and there is optional movement, which is a blue arrow. So you're going to play cards out, and you're going to move your fish. Say there's like 2 forward blue arrows, and then a turn right black arrow, and then a forward blue arrow. You can move forward those 2 blue arrows if you'd like. You must move 1 tick to the right, turn your fish in direction, because the direction your fish is facing is important in this game. And then you have the option of moving forward again. Now, if you only wanted that turn right movement, you could use that card for that, but it would be a waste of a lot of movement. In this game, where your fish is located can be really limiting, so you want to make sure that if you have extra movement that can get your fish into a better position, you're using it. You are going to go through, everybody's going to play as many cards from their hand as they liked in order to eat as many dragonflies and frogs as they like. And then at the end of each round, you are going to move your little point-scoring fish around the edge of the board. Whoever has the most points at the end of the 7th round from eating so many dragonflies and so many frogs is going to win the Best Fish Award, I guess.
Best Fish Award. You get a nice little necklace.
There is also a mechanic that if at any point all of the dragonflies are eaten off the board, there's going to be a flood. So what that does is it resets the board. Everybody is pushed to the edge of the board, and then all of the lily pads are refilled, which is going to happen at the end of every season as well, but it's going to push everybody back towards the edge of the board. So if you are in a bad position or you're not near where all of the lily pads are, you will have the opportunity on a flood to sort of reset so that you're back in the game.
Koi is nice. I'm glad I had a chance to play this. I will say it is very luck dependent on the cards that you draw. Since each of these cards is going to determine all you can do, it's very possible that you're going to get stuck in a corner or you're going to be facing the wrong direction and you're not going to be able to do anything. That being said, it's also possible that you get the best run of cards ever and you're able to catch your 5 dragonflies in a row, which is what happened to me. And I felt very cool that I was able to line up my cards in a certain direction because stuff just happened to be in the right place. It is random in that way, and it's, you got to kind of decide whether or not you want that randomness. I would say, honestly, with that level of randomness, maybe have the game be 2 rounds shorter or something, and maybe shrink the board a little bit, or maybe have options for you to turn yourself a little bit better, because it will come down to whether or not you get the cards you need to do the things you want to do. That being said, it was fun. It didn't super outstay its welcome,
No.
And I definitely still felt like I could do something on a turn where I didn't do a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, I had some turns where I definitely felt like I was spending a whole bunch of cards to get not a whole lot of points, which didn't feel great. I do want to touch on the components standpoint of this. The art on it is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
We talked about there being pretty fish because, dang, those fish are pretty. There is a slight component issue with the fish in that the scoring marker is the same as the placement marker, and the scoring marker doesn't actually fit on the scoring track, so if you've got a couple of people who are at the same point value, it's very easy for them to, take over a couple of spaces.
Yeah, you're putting a fish-shaped peg into a round hole, but long ways.
Yeah, it's not great. The other issue that I had was not really so much an issue as it was a difficulty. When you are playing the cards, you start at the bottom of the card, which is, and Eric was showing us this, if you lay the card at where your fish is facing, the first thing that it encounters. But looking at a card and processing it from the bottom up as opposed to the top down is something that I was often just it wasn't natural to me. So I was like, oh, first I'm going to do this thing at the top and then I'll do the next thing. And I'm like, no, wait, that's backwards. My fish is going to end up facing the complete wrong direction. So you do want to be careful. Make sure that you are planning from the bottom down, which is just, it feels weird. I don't know how they could have done that better because it actually does make sense that way. It is just like finicky.
Yeah, but it was nice and it was a pleasant experience. It wasn't super brain burning.
I appreciate him teaching it to us.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that. I always love hanging out with Eric Booth when I get a chance. He's a great guy. And if you do want to listen to his reviews, go check out The Shuffle, part of Punchboard Media. Ta-da! But yeah, Koi, nice little fun game. I think it's a good palate cleanser, especially between what we played there when we played Escape Tales, which was super intense, both thematically and puzzly, and then the next game.
I do think if you like programming but you don't like uncertainty, this is a good game because it's technically programming because you play a card and then you have to do everything on the card, but you don't have to plan for it ahead of time. So that way it feels like it's not really programming.
Yeah.
Like you're never going to be in a situation where you plan out something and you're in the complete wrong position and you now can't do it. As long as you plan before you play the card, like you're playing all your cards one at a time on your turn. So you should not have a problem with that.
Yeah, well, that's Koi. All right, well, around this time, it was 3 a.m., and I locked eyes with Chris Kirkman across the room. He had a box called Underwater Cities, and I was very excited to check this game out because I've heard so much about it. So we had a chance to sit down with Dan Patrice and Chris Kirkman, and we played Underwater Cities. And we started learning this decently complicated Euro game at 3 a.m. Danielle, how did that work for us?
I mean, it worked okay for everybody but you.
This game shouldn't play in 4 hours, but it did. Ta-da! That's my song. Anyway, Underwater Cities 2018, released from Delicious Games, coming in 2019 from Rio Grande?
Yeah, there was a BGG news story that said that.
Hachimachi, I'm excited about that. 1 to 4 players, 80 to 150 minutes. No!
I mean, 150
probably.
minutes is 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I feel like it should have been able to have been played at 2.5 hours. At not 3 in the morning.
I will say, I feel like with a few plays, we could get this down to a tight 2 to 2.5 hours at 4 players. And I'd probably play it at 3. I like these kind of games at 3. Designed by Vladimir Suchi, who did Last Will and most recently Pulsar 2849, which we never came back and talked about. We should do that one at some point. Art by Milan Vavron. This is a tableau building, network building, and worker placement game. Danielle, would you let me explain Underwater Cities, or do you want to tackle this one?
No, you can have fun.
Okay,
What do you remember?
Imagine playing Terraforming Mars, but underwater. And then, instead of that, yeah?
The game is underwater. You are not underwater.
You could play this underwater if you laminate all the components. It'd be totally, you can do what you want to do with your Underwater Cities. But I say that it's like Terraforming Mars in that you've got a big card-based engine-building component to this game. I think that that's really the draw that you want to make that is connecting to Terraforming Mars. You have the one central board, which instead of being Mars, is kind of just an action selection tableau, and I'll talk about the way that cards interact with that in a little bit, but from that you're going to be taking actions to get you resources and allow you to build buildings and convert stuff, because you have your own personal player board, which is going to be this network of underwater cities. Hence the name of the game. You'll start in one corner of your board, and you're going to be building out a network of little bubbled cities and tunnels to hopefully connect with some mainland areas on your personal board. And then also, I guess, have generation, resource generation domes that you're building. Nodules, little discs that you build around your domes that generate resources.
The farm makes food. Yeah. The laboratory makes science.
the abstract is science.
Yeah, the credit union makes money.
Yeah. So you're doing all of this, and you're doing the action selection with obviously having a bunch of points because this is a victory point kind of game, rather than a money or a do-it-the-first kind of game. Points win you the game. On every round of the game, you're going to have some cards, and you're going to decide how you're going to play those cards. They're split into, I think it was 3 colors. You got like red, yellow, and green cards, or maybe it's red, yellow, green, and blue cards. But you're going to play those cards onto that central board. And if you have a card that matches up with the color and that you want to take there, you both get probably a power off of the board and off of your card, which is good because then you get to do 2 things with your card. You can play something off color and just get the board action if you want as well.
Yeah, if you really need that board action, then it may be worth it to not get the card action, or if you just have a card that you don't really need.
Yeah. So you're going to be using those board actions, and then as you play cards on that action is locked out, and nobody else can take it in that particular round. Except, of course, there's one in a 4-player game, you have a tile or an action space that allows you to duplicate an action because it would be too tight otherwise. But you're going to do that, and you're going to be playing some cards into your tableau. You can have 4 of your cards as assistant cards that you can go to another action space to activate, and they do something like, get money, get resources, build a thing, blah, blah, blah. And then you also have cards that are going to give you immediate effects or just long-time non-action buffs, like anytime you build a tunnel, you get a money, stuff like that. The synergy of stuff is too complex for me to really talk about, and also because I was half asleep during most of this game because it was 3 a.m. and we were playing a heavy Euro game, and I regret that now. But from what I did get out of it, I was really, really excited about this game in the way that I am about Terraforming Mars. And frankly, I don't see this replacing Terraforming Mars for me, because Terraforming Mars already does Terraforming Mars extremely well.
We also bought a lot of it.
We've also bought a lot of Terraforming Mars. But if you like that style of game and you want another one that focuses more on your personal player board network building rather than the area control of that action board, and also if the action selection kind of elbowing out feels good to you, Underwater Cities does those things really well, I thought. And for that reason, I'm really excited to get this one played again.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot more interaction in this game than there is in Terraforming Mars, because what actions you have the ability to take depends on what actions have been taken earlier in the round. So you need to account for what you think other people are going to do on their turns in order to plan for what is going to be available to you. So if you wanted more interaction in Terraforming Mars, this is definitely something that's going to provide that. There is a lot more luck, I feel like, involved, because you have such a small hand size in this game. You only have, I think, 3 cards that you're allowed to keep from round to round.
Yeah.
And you are drawing your cards randomly off the top. If you are used to playing this kind of game with a drafting mechanic, that's not in here. So if you need an orange card and there is no orange card in your hand and you didn't draw one, sorry.
Wah, wah.
But I did enjoy how tight all of the resources in this game felt, and you really needed to make the most out of all of your resources if you wanted to really get anything done.
Yeah.
There is a feed your people mechanic in this game, which when we were initially when it was being explained to us, I was like, oh, that seems really frustrating, because then I'm having to spend all these resources that I'm working so hard to get to do Feed Your People, which is the problem with Feed Your People anytime. But you're only having to do it 3 times over the course of the game, and you have 5 rounds, I think it is, between them. So you definitely have enough time, and if you don't have anything to feed your people by the time it's to feed your people, frankly, you've been doing something very, very wrong. So I feel like as long as you're playing the game properly, that mechanic is really almost like an afterthought. Like, I don't really understand what it adds to the game, but it certainly doesn't hinder the game in a way a lot of Feed Your People mechanics do.
I feel like that's also in there to keep your production from just exponentially exploding, because I feel like it was never hard to generate resources for that, but I feel like if I didn't have to spend for food or something like that, then I probably could have gotten away with a lot more. So it's kind of like an artificial limiting in terms of that. Because your production, the way that your production buildings work is you can put, 1 production building down, and then you can upgrade that to get a better benefit. And if you have 2 of the same type at a particular city, then you get kind of an even beefier output on that particular production building, which makes sense. But it would be very easy to overpower your kelp factories and just be crushing kelp and getting 12 kelp around or something like that, which would be a lot, and then you could do stuff with that, probably.
I mean, there's a limited number of things that you can do with kelp, though.
True.
The other thing is that you do also get a bonus for having a diverse city, having one of each of the production modules at a city. So it is a trade-off. Do you want the bonus at the end of the game for having a diverse city, or do you want to have multiple of the same type? Because there are only 3 spots at a city unless you have a specific card that opens up a 4th. Like, when you build a second thing to get that additional bonus, you're giving up that diversified module bonus at the end of the game. That being said, usually I feel like it's worth it because you're getting points every time there's a production as well. So you're getting a couple of points over the course of the game and way more resources. So that is, if you can get them upgraded, which if you're at the wrong spot in the player order, that upgrade may be kind of tough to get. You're going to have to wait for another round when you may not have the right resources.
Yeah, so my final thoughts on it, at least for here, I'm really excited to play this one again. I would not be surprised if you hear a lot of people playing this and talking about it in 2019 when it does hit the States. This is the kind of game that has that Terraforming Mars appeal to it. It's a accessible yet complex Euro game with a lot of fun mechanics that work together in interesting ways. I don't think it's going to overpower Terraforming Mars, but I
No.
feel like it's going to be one of the hot games of next year for sure.
Yeah, I'm a little bit cooler on it than you are. It was fine and I enjoyed it. It was a little bit longer than I wanted it to be.
Sorry.
Which, well, no, I'm not even saying that necessarily from the game went slowly perspective. Just, you are playing 15 rounds of this thing, and by the end of it, I was like, okay, how many more times are we going to go through this and do this? Because there was a little bit of frustration every time you couldn't get what you wanted out of a round, and then
Yeah.
it just felt like I spent the last 20 minutes doing this thing which didn't really get me what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. I'm not saying it's a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, and if you're like, your favorite game is Terraforming Mars and you want something that is different enough from that you're not going to feel like it's a retread, but has a lot of the similar mechanics with the engine building and that kind of thing, this is a good game for you. It's just not my favorite.
Yeah. Well,
I enjoyed it, though.
Yeah, with Terraforming Mars being in the world, it's hard for any other game to be the favorite in that space.
Well, yeah, I feel like we're also really overstressing how much it is Terraforming Mars, because a lot of this game is that placement action,
True.
which is not something you even remotely have to deal with in Terraforming Mars. It's just that, you're working so hard with your cards to generate the resources that are sort of creating your player board. It feels very much like Terraforming Mars, but don't get the idea that this is the same game. It is a similar weight, and it has a lot of similar mechanics, and like it gives you the same gamer feeling, but I don't think they're the same game.
True. Are you excited to play it again? We'll probably play this again.
Okay. Let's do it at not 3 a.m.
Probably a good call. 3 p.m. on a Saturday would be a very good time to play this game.
I guess I would like to generate some science, please.
All right, well, after we finished the marathon session of Underwater Cities, 8 a.m. was close enough for us to just kind of pack it up, and we helped everybody get the space cleaned up. I really do want to thank Dan Patrice for putting this event together. It's a
And
really
Gamers
fun
Armory.
event. Yeah, and the Gamers Armory for hosting. They're such a great location, and back when I used to travel up there for work a lot more, they were my number one stop, and it's always kind of fun in a way to come back to this every year and meet some of those people that I had met and kind of gotten into. This is back in like the early days of the podcast that I started going up there and kind of, meeting the group up there. But it's a great location, a great game store, great gaming space, and I just really love getting the chance to go up there every now and then.
Yep.
All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed us talking about a whole crap ton of games, because we're going to take a break and talk about beer. Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com. So the weekend before Gamers for Cures, when a lot of people were participating in the Extra Life Gaming Marathon, we were doing our yearly, I guess 3 times yearly, trek up to Asheville to hang out at Burial Beer Company for one of their festivals. This one was the Burnpile Festival. I think this is the 4th or 5th one that they've done of Burnpile. 3, 4, 5. Yeah, okay, so 5. And basically what it is, it's a great beer festival. They have 4 different tap stations. I think we had 40 or 50 breweries from around the country, a lot of which aren't distributed here in the U.S., or in North Carolina, and it's just such an awesome experience and an awesome time at one of our favorite places in the world. So we thought we'd just talk a little bit about it and what we did and what we saw there.
Burnpile is Burial's Harvest Festival, so they do have a lot of sort of harvesty style beers, I want to say. Like there were a couple of Marzens there. There were a lot of things that had a lot of fruits and bountiful harvest type flavors in them. But beyond the beer, which was as always amazing. I mean, Burial always does great releases at these festivals. Their guests always bring great beers because people bring stuff that they want to share with markets outside of their own area. Mm-hmm. We just talked in our Seattle Beer Traveler about going to Holy Mountain, and one of the beers that we had a chance to try at Holy Mountain that they had just released had been brought over for the Burnpile Festival, their Sunroom beer, which was still just as tasty as I remember it being. And the beer is amazing, but the thing that really made this year's Burnpile stand out was the fact that they had some of their off-topic segments. Mm-hmm. You had to have not a special ticket, but a ticket that allowed you to go into the off-topics, which was the VIP ticket, which also allowed you to get the bottled beer, so that was kind of a good thing to get. But they had brewers from 5 different breweries that they have good relationships with and that they've, I think in most cases, done collaborations with one exception that I can think of. They came in, they brought some of the beer that they were very excited about to share with everybody beyond what was already being poured on tap. And they just did a question and answer. They did a little bit of talking about what they wanted to talk about, but mostly it was people who were there and who were interested in the breweries discussing with the folks from those breweries what they wanted to know about. And it was absolutely phenomenal. It, not only paced out the festival for us, because this type of festival, while Burial does a really good, smart thing, which is make it a token festival, if you've ever been to something like an Oktoberfest, where you just get a wristband and you can do whatever you want, like, that is just a mess. There's a reason that those things are just too many drunk people in one place. Whereas Burnpile is a token festival. You purchase a number of tokens at a cost per token, and then you turn in the tokens. The bartenders don't have to worry about logging anything or getting payment for anything. They just take the token and you're good to go. It speeds up the lines and it paces you because you know how many beers you're going to drink and you know how long you want to make that last, and it's great. But these off-topics sort of did the same thing. You would go in and you'd not only get all this really interesting information, but it essentially paced out your festival for you, because you'd get a beer or two during the off-topic, but that was paced out over the course of the hour that you were in the thing. So it really did make it feel like there was a lot more going on, and it spread out your tokenage, and it was just really awesome. But, I mean, pacing aside, I'm very glad that they helped us have a nice full festival, but these off-topics were so interesting, and I wanted to just sort of go through and talk about the people that we had a chance to listen to speak and what breweries they were from, and just sort of touch on them. And if you would fill in your thoughts on them as I go, I would appreciate that. First up, the first one, the VIP ticket that allowed you to go to these off-topics also got you in an hour earlier. So the first off-topic actually was for everybody that was in the place, and that was from Avery Swanson, the head brewer at Jester King in Austin, Texas. And she was absolutely amazing to listen to speak in the off-topic, but I actually got a chance to talk to her a little bit later as we were later in the festival, and she is a joy to speak to.
Yeah.
I had asked her a couple of questions about being a female head brewer at a brewery, and she was talking about the different implications of that and how it's frustrating sometimes to be the idea of a female head brewer. Why can't you just be an awesome brewer? And that was a great conversation to have. Jester King is a very cool brewery. They're all wild and, well, they're not all, but they're mostly wild and farmhouse ales. So when they came over to Burial, they did, as I believe almost all of these off-topic brewers did, they did a collaboration with Burial, and they actually brewed a clean beer at Burial because she said it's not something she gets to do very often. So they brewed a clean beer with Burial that's going to be releasing a little bit farther out. And she was just great to listen to speak. They talked about the fact that they have sort of recruited a goat farmer from a commune out there in Austin that is now living on their property, and they've got all these goats, and now she's trying to, like, animal husbandry these goats in addition to being the head brewer, which was really awesome to listen to. I do also want to quickly touch on, when I got back to Charlotte, Tuesday of this week, we had an event from Jester King at Salud, which, if you listen to the beginning of the episode, you know how much we like Salud. And I got a chance to try a beer from them that was absolutely phenomenal, and I just wanted to, like, call it out as being very, very good. The beer is called Correlation, and this is actually, they take apple juice and pressings that are from Gala apples that come from North Texas, and they re-fermented them with a farmhouse ale. So it's got that funky wild yeast, and it had Texas-grown barley, rolled oats, honey malt, golden hops, and a touch of chamomile. Ooh. And then they aged it in Muscat wine barrels. Ooh. And it was just so good. It was the kind of sour that doesn't hurt. If you've had it, like, Distill sours. I hate calling out distill for this, but their sours just, like, make the part of your jaw where your actual jawbone connects to your head hurt so bad. But it was a nice, like, it was definitely sour, but it wasn't painfully sour, and you could get the chamomile and you could get the honey, and it was so good. So if you come across Correlation, I highly recommend it from Jester King.
I think one of the things that I most appreciated from hearing Havery talk is how aggressively she likes to push the boundaries of beer and do things outside of style, or just say, I don't care that's not that style. This is what I want to do, and this is the way that we want to make this beer happen. I love that attitude from brewers, and it really shows with how cool some of Jester King's stuff is. I wish we got more of their stuff here in North Carolina, but
we did on Tuesday.
We did.
You were out of town. I also want to mention that she as of I think like the day before or like the day of Burnpile, she found out she had passed her Master Cicerone exam, of which there are only like less than 20 people in the whole country or world that have passed this exam. And she had said, like you were saying, like she wanted to be able to do that so she could say to someone, yes, I very obviously know how this is supposed to have been done, but I wanted to do it this way because it was interesting to me. She mentioned in the off topic that her favorite beer that Jester King brews is Le Petit Prince, which is funky in a flavor, and it was sold in a green bottle, and it was funky in the way that she remembered beer having tasted that was of that similar style. It was a little bit skunked, which is what she was remembering, and she wanted to replicate that like moderately skunked but not bad flavor, and that's what she brewed into that beer. And to be able to be like, yes, I understand that if you were to brew this in the most perfect and style dictated way, it wouldn't necessarily be like this. But then to also have that experimentation, be like, yeah, but this is what I want, and it's kind of weird, and it's kind of funky, and that's what we're going to do, I think is just really interesting, and I love the way they do their stuff over there. I can't think of a thing from Jester King that I've had that wasn't at least good. So, yeah, go check that out, and if you have a chance to, like, hang out and listen to her talk, if you're in Texas or whatever, go do it. She is awesome.
I think that Austin just shot up higher on the list of beer cities for us to visit after meeting her and hearing a lot more about Jester King. Yeah, she is the bomb.
Next up, we got to hear from Gerard Olson and Daniel Endicott from Forest and Main Brewing in Ambler, Pennsylvania. That was a really interesting discussion about their space, because their brewery is in like an old Victorian house that they had converted to a brewery, and they've just recently taken over a little bit more space. And the space that they have was for a while dictating what they could brew and how they were interacting with their customers, how well they could distribute. And they actually said that they had just recently pulled back a lot of their distribution to only be distributing at their location, which is not distribution, it is just serving, and then to like 2 other bars in the area that they're in, which is not really like it's, you're never going to go to Ambler as a trip, I think, unless you're going to Forest and Main, maybe. Like, it is not a metropolis, but they have much more limited distribution just because it worked better for what they wanted to do with their brewery. They are cultivating an in-house yeast strand that they're using for everything, and what that yeast becomes and when in the season it is harvested is dictating the beers that they're brewing, and they talked a little bit about that, which was super interesting to hear about.
Yeah, I'd really like to see if we have a way to drive by this at some point. You know, if we're going between like Jersey and Northern Virginia or something. It's not too terribly out of the way at that point. I think it's kind of outside of Philly. Maybe-ish we could get there.
Maybe. Pennsylvania's a big place. Let me figure out.
I am very interested to learn more about this kind of smaller area brewery. So if you are up in that Pennsylvania-ish area, maybe you can go to Ambler and find out.
Yeah, it's a little bit north of Philly. So if you are headed north from Philadelphia, either to go up to, I guess, Canada or New York, or if you were going to swing a little bit wide on the way back to Jersey or New York City, that would be the way to get there.
Yeah, and I guess with all of these, if we have any listeners that are out in these areas and you've been to these breweries, please let us know either in the show notes on Board Game Geek or come hang out in our Slack channel and talk about it.
True fact. Next, we heard from Kristen Popchef, who is the Director of Operations, and Colin Jones, who is the co-owner of WeldWorks in Greeley, Colorado. Now, I know we've talked about some collaborations that WeldWorks did, because I know a lot of the Denver breweries do a lot of collaborations because they are, there's a lot of them and they're very good. One of the things that we got to taste on the off-topic was a collaboration they did with Microphone from Chicago, which is a brewery that always does phenomenal things, and WeldWorks does very good things as well, so it was great to get that collaboration to give it a shot. But they were also talking a lot about the fact that they had just done their first invitational festival that they were doing, and how folks had come out to Greeley, which is a little bit outside of Denver, and they had this great festival, so we got a little bit of talk about them putting that together, which was interesting because we were at a sort of invitational festival at the time, and to get a different perspective and to get the Burial employees' conversation with those folks who had just planned a different festival was really interesting. I am looking forward to getting a chance to try more WeldWorks because I like what I've had from them, and especially if they're going to keep collaborating with, like, really good collaborations are not always what you're going to find, and I like that they are very talented at doing that type of thing. Also, the stuff they brewed themselves was very good. Next up, we got to hear from Matt Monahan, who is the co-founder of Other Half in Brooklyn, New York. This was a fun off-topic because Doug, who is one of the co-owners of Burial, who is he and his wife and their head brewer Tim had founded Burial, is just really great friends with Matt. So it was less a really instructional talk and more two buddies just like hanging out and having a really great time. It was interesting. They talked a lot about why Other Half does really just a phenomenal array of IPAs and how they came to be the brewery that was doing all of these IPAs and double IPAs. It was just a fun chat to listen to. Obviously, Other Half makes amazing beer. So if you have not had a chance to try it, I highly recommend it. But I mean, the takeaway I got from that was just how much people can enjoy what they do and how when you enjoy what you do it so much better and it comes through in the product. That was just phenomenal. If you like, that is the thing I wanted to get out of this. And while having a ton of great information was super fun from all of these other things, it was making of my afternoon just to watch these two guys hang out and take these questions from people who cared enough about the answers to have bought this extra ticket and to have taken time out of their festival to be in this room asking this question. So it was just a good time.
It was a lot of fun. And it was perfect for that point in the day as well.
Yeah, we were getting sort of closer to like 5:36 at that point. We had listened to a bunch of people tell us very interesting things, and then we just got a fun sort of like a buddy conversation.
Yeah.
Finally, they announced sort of a secret fifth off topic because there were only supposed to be four that they had announced throughout the ticket sales and at the beginning of the festival. They finally had one with Cascade, which is a brewery out in Portland, and Kevin Martin, who is currently their director of brewery operations is his title. He was their blender for many years and has now taken over their director of brewery operations position. And he had a really interesting discussion because the blender at Burial actually used to work with him at Cascade as one of the blenders out there. So they both come from a wine blending background. And to have that discussion where you talk about sour blending from such a knowledgeable perspective and from people who have had shared experiences because they worked together for so long, it was really interesting to figure out how you get all of the different complexities in sours and how programs that mix these blended sours work. He talked about how at Cascade they have a barrel program where essentially they have to come up with a brand new sour every week. And you obviously can't brew a new sour every week because it is a blended product and it takes time to ripen and mature. It's all about how you mix what you have and how you make sure that you enhance certain flavors based on what you put together. They also discussed a lot about sort of what it takes to be able to be in a position where you are able to have the skill set to be a sour blender, because it is not obviously exactly like blending wine, but it's not like brewing beer at the same time. Cascade has recently transitioned that head of brewery operations from their longtime head of operations to Kevin, who has just recently taken that position. So he talked a little bit about that transition as well, and it was compared to being a blender at Cascade versus coming over to Burial and being the blender at Burial, pretty much. That was great. It was people who were peers sort of looking at it from different brewery perspectives, and it was very educational as well as different from everything that we had heard so far. While Jester King is a predominantly farmhouse and sour brewery, Cascade is a sour brewery in a different way than I can think of any brewery being. Like, Cascade sours are...
They're approached from a much different perspective, I feel, and just kind of like the way that they approach, like, they're different.
They treat it like a wine, which I think is part of what makes it that way. They are above and beyond most of the sours that you're going to get. And now, to have heard this discussion, we can understand why and what process goes into that. And it was really just super interesting. It was a great way to end the day.
Yeah, I love Cascade. I was so excited that I had a chance to visit them. And just anytime I get a chance to try some of their more off-the-wall stuff, they had brought this bottle called Primordial Noir that was like the blending level version of the Sang Noir that they do. And it was just so intensely strong and fruity and different. just this really dark, rich sour that you wouldn't really get in your typical blended sour release because this is just one of the parts of it.
Yeah, normally this is the red sour that they would put into anything that is blended red, but they instead of blending it down to get different accents and different flavors coming through, this is just the base, like, in your face thing that they put through, and it was very good, but it was very intense.
Yeah. I just love Cascade. If you're out on the East Coast, if you're somewhere around Portland, you've got to go visit the Cascade.
I think you mean the West Coast.
Did I say East?
You did, but it's cool.
We've said a lot of words in this particular episode.
Let's say not a lot anymore.
All right, well, it is time for the final round, and we'll go through this one really quickly. The final round is where we talk with our Slack channel about various topics of note, and this one was all about marathons. My question was, have you participated in charity gaming marathons? What makes it a success, in your opinion? How do you keep the energy going? We were very short on responses on this one, probably because everybody was recovering from Extra Life. Javier Perez says he is not. Over here, only Magic-related events are a success. I think before anything, you need a very motivated group of gamers, some people that will definitely show up. That's kind of why I liked doing Gamers for Cures, because since it was a charity donation thing, we bought a charity ticket, we donated money to that charity, and people who want to go to this event are going to go and they're going to stay, they're in it for the long haul. Extra Life, fantastic, and I really like it as well. I feel like there's a lot more flexibility at a lot of Extra Life events, so people will come and go as they please. You're still donating money, to say, hey, I'm pledging money that I'm going to be here for a certain amount, but I think Gamers for Cures being that kind of group project like that really tapped into that community and said, you know what, we're going to crush this thing. And oh boy, did we play a lot of games.
Sure. BJ from Board Game Gumbo said, our local con is for charity, the New Hope Foundation, providing mentoring to at-risk youth. It lasts for 12 hours. Is that a marathon event? Or does it need to hit the magical 25 or 24-hour mark or whatever?
I will still count 12 as a marathon. That's a lot of gaming.
Yeah, especially if you are pledging to have funds being raised to a charity.
Yeah.
That feels like a marathon to me.
Patrick Hilliard chimes in with our final words as usual. He says, caffeinated beer. Actually, I can't do these things. Just saw Jake post about one last week. He did chime in later with, I did 12 without a charity on Saturday. I'm still fine with 12 being a marathon. That's a long gaming session.
True.
And probably, if you're doing that, you're playing with a group of people and you're having a great time. I don't think I've ever really tried caffeinated beer, and I don't think I ever want to try caffeinated beer. Oh, we mean like coffee stouts?
Yeah, coffee stouts should be caffeinated.
I guess they do have some caffeine. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, if you would like to join us for the next final round, you can come join our Slack channel, draftmechanic.net/Slack, or just go to draftmechanic.net and poke around for a while. If you want to get in touch with us on the internet, it's at draftmechanic, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the usual places. Send us an email at draftmechanic@gmail.com.
If you are in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, we are going to have our next meetup on November 20th, which is Tuesday at Salud Cerveceria. If you are not in the area and you'd like to let us know about what you think about this episode, or if you are in the area and you'd like to put it on the internet, because some people like that type of thing, we have a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. There will be a thread up for this.
And grab the Draft Mechanic micro badge. Yay!
Yay!
Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Gray Fox Games. Visit grayfoxgames.com and sign up for their newsletter for the latest Gray Fox games, quality games, cleverly crafted. Danielle, we've did it.
We haven't finished it yet.
I thought we had completed all the requirements of this episode of Draft Mechanic. Are you telling me there's something else to say?
As always, I would like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly and tell them that I'll see them back here in 1 week for another round.
Ooh, we'll be back. That's hockey.
Night.
Draft Mechanic episode 88 was recorded on Sunday, November 18th, 2018 in front of a live studio cats.
Beauty's in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children of ladies or gentlemen, we know you'd rather be at a table finishing the best game you've ever played, telling your friends why you lost, or better still, arguing over how you won. But you cannot, for time is limited and the best of times are brief. Luckily, here at Eternally Bored, we boldly bottle banter and have it ready at your fingertips via podcast and various video venues. So pull down the load and come join us where we are eternally bored so you don't have to be.
Punchboard Media.
Where we all
Bring something
to the table.
Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com.